The month of September is Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month. So, all this month on the show, we're going to be talking to people in various fields about suicide prevention, suicide awareness, and how we can help. This week, I'm talking to Melissa Barasona about this subject. She's very passionate about bringing light to suicide awareness within the youth, within our schools, and within normalizing this conversation. This is a tough topic, but we're trying to normalize this so that it doesn't have to be tough. It doesn't have to be taboo. This can be something that we feel open to talk about. A lot of times when we're able to talk about these things, it disarms them within us, and we can actually feel the rationale that keeps us here. So let's normalize these types of conversations, not just with suicide awareness, but with all the conversations that seem to be taboo. The more we can talk, the more we can find the help that we need. Thank you so much for being a part of this show and this journey. Hope you get something from the conversation. We'll see you on the other side. But first, a message from our sponsor. Our healing journey can be difficult and might feel lonely at times. That's why I love sound baths. Where we can get together in a community, we intrinsically support and feel supported by others. And that combined energy can help us go deeper into our own healing journeys. And all you have to do is just lay there for 1 hour and listen to beautiful healing sounds. I'm a sound healing practitioner, and I hold sound baths on a regular basis in the greater Seattle area. You can find my next sound baths on my website at adamrealhealing.com. That's Adam, A-D-A-M, Real, R-I-E-H-L, Healing, Healing.com. adamrealhealing.com. Your healing is worth your time. And now an uninterrupted podcast with Melissa Barasona. All right, welcome back to our show. Today, sitting across from me is a good friend of mine, Melissa Barasona. Melissa and I just have great conversations about life. We get coffee all the time and chat about just the things that make us feel good about life, the things that challenge us in life. And so one of the things that Melissa is extremely passionate about is mental health awareness and suicide prevention. So Melissa's got her master's degree in teaching. She loves teaching youth and helping youth develop their learning skills and just helping youth in general, which I think is a huge thing that we should focus on as a society, as well as psychology. The thing that kind of drew Melissa and I together is that yoga is one of those catalysts that kind of in its own way saved both of our lives. And so the episode coming out about Kundalini yoga that I have coming out this Friday is basically very similar. This Kundalini yoga helped save this person's life, and when we find those things that do help us in that beautiful way, we usually become very passionate about sharing that. I've made the joke before on this show about how, like, if you ask me how to help my body, how to help myself, I'm probably gonna tell you some yoga type shit because I'm a yogi and I've been doing yoga for a lot of my life. Just like if you ask a monk, hey, how do I find peace? They're gonna tell you some monk type shit because monk's been monking for years, right? They're gonna tell you to sit down, be peaceful, probably plant a garden, and like listen to your breath, right? So not one way is better than the other, but these are all just different ways that we can look at our bodies, look at our constitution, look at our beings, and find health in some kind of way. And so I love when people are super passionate about what they're passionate about and they're able to share that passion in some kind of way. So with Suicide Prevention Month and Awareness Month is September. This entire month, we're going to be doing episodes to bring awareness to suicide prevention and some of the areas that we can help as either laymen's, as friends, as family members, as just noticing somebody's eyes in the street and being like, hey, I'm going to be a human to this human right now, even though I have no idea who they are. That's not putting the responsibility on you by any means, right? But we're just trying to add context in ways that we can help people. Also normalizing these conversations, right? It's not abnormal to have suicidal thoughts, right? It's not abnormal. That doesn't mean it's always going to happen. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. Sometimes that gives you an understanding of your desire to actually have community, want to reach out, right? There's reasons that these thoughts might come into play, but I think normalizing the conversation about having these type of thoughts might take us out of this hole that we dig ourselves into when we find ourselves in these thoughts. I'm a 42-year-old man. I can tell you, I can't tell you how many times I've thought about suicide, from a very young age to sometimes yesterday, right? Again, doesn't mean I'm acting on it, but if we internally shame ourselves for this dialogue that we have, that deepens the divide that we're already in. So having friends, having family, having people that you can talk to about this shit is very, very important because it normalizes our human emotions. And when we can normalize our emotions, then we can talk about them openly, and then we don't have to hide them. Because when we hide them, that's when they become behaviors, and the behaviors are what's toxic, and the behaviors are what have to be really, really drawn into because now they've turned into something more than just an emotion that we feel, that we let experience, and then we let go. So we have a lot of stuff we're going to talk about today. Melissa, thank you so much for being here. I love having conversations with you. The only difference right now is that we have microphones in front of us and we're not drinking coffee.
Still good.
Still
Pleasure
good.
to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you being here. So you've been teaching kids for a while. You're very passionate about what you're passionate about, which I love. And one of the things that kind of keeps coming up in our conversations is mental health and suicide prevention. And so where is your passion coming from with all of this?
My passion, where does it come? That's a fantabulous question. Man, where does it come from? It comes from just my inner being. You know, it's something that keeps me up. It's something that I'm very connected to my faith as a Christian, and I'm pulled to like be creator of like, why am I here, right? What is my purpose? And a lot of things that you've mentioned with your own mental health allows me to even share because it's such a safe space that you offer to share. Is, you know, there have been times where I've just thought about suicide. There are times where I felt alone. And I know that if I'm still here standing and I have a recipe that helps manage my own mental health after being diagnosed with general anxiety disorder, depression, and just newly ADHD last year, it allows me to know, okay, well, I know this and I'm not confined to this box. And that there's an empowerment through talking about it and sharing about it and knowing that, hey, even though you deal with whatever you deal with internally, that you're not the only one. And there's ways to manage it. You're not alone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's there's this, whether it's been told to us or something internal. I could speak personally. I'll speak to myself. But when I first started having these thoughts, I definitely thought something was wrong with me. There's something wrong. There's something miswired. There's something that, there's something that is not right. And I can honestly say the more that I've had these thoughts and not acted on them, the more I understand that that's not it. That's not it. I think, I don't know how to say this without sounding strange, but I just love sounding strange. But I think there's sometimes a collective consciousness, right? There is a theory out there that there's a collective consciousness, right? That we all are stemming from the same source, and that we're just divergence of different variations of the same being. That's why we're all connected. We're all interconnected. There's some quote unquote science behind some of this stuff that. The more knowledge that's around, the longer that it's around, the easier it is for people to catch on to. Like songs that are very universally known. Like we'll know a song if we've never even heard it before. It'll sound familiar, and that might be like the happy birthday song in another language or something like that, to where enough people, and the idea is that enough people consciously know this song that it's easy for the non-person that doesn't know that song to grab that from the ethos and be like, oh yeah, I'm familiar with that. Like that makes sense. So I think that, there's sometimes where there could be a collective consciousness of sorrow, of woe, of despair. And so with that, the strength of those thoughts and the strength of that despair and the strength of that emotion sometimes could allow the people that are a little more tapped into their own emotions to feel that ping of the suicide, the thoughts of, the desperation behind, and maybe not necessarily them acting on it, but those thoughts might just pop into the head because so many people in so many instances are having these considerations. So there is that kind of theory that's out there too, that it's not necessarily you that's having the thought, but there's so much of this thought going on because of, let's say, a war that breaks out in a certain area, or the pandemic that just happened. There's a global crisis of some sort that that gives people this thought process of like, shit, what's worth living for? Are we going to survive? What's the next step? And when we have that collective despair, sometimes that might seep into the people that are just a little more tuned in, right? And not to say that that it still shouldn't be addressed and shouldn't be spoken about. And I think that's one of the reasons why I love this topic right now, is because the more we normalize this stuff, the more I can just call Melissa up and say, hey, Melissa, I just had this interesting thought about this, maybe suicide, right? Now, I don't see myself doing it, but for some reason I have this thought. Can we just talk about it? And one of the things with suicide awareness too is that we're not really set up to handle this as normal, quote unquote, uneducated or not specialized in this field humans. And so, like, if your friend says, hey, Adam, I'm having suicidal thoughts, a lot of times that can like throw up the red flag with somebody and be like, oh my God, no, please don't. Who do we need to call? We're going to call these people. We're going to get you the help we need. That sometimes can exacerbate the situation and make it worse, because a lot of times that person just needed to say the thing that they needed to say. Yes, they might need some attention around it, but if you draw in like medical help, police help, all this parental help, things like that, that can deepen that person's sorrow, despair, anger, anxiety, depression, because all they needed to do was just say the thing they needed to say, didn't need the attention brought to them for it. And a lot of times that stuff can just go away once you say it.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely signs you can see, and there's a simpler way to really be there for someone when they're asking, when they're, sharing something that's so deep and so painful for them.
Right.
For them to share that, it takes a lot of courage, and like you just mentioned it, it's sometimes we don't know how to talk about something that is stigmatized, and I think we're going in that direction of being able to talk about it. And this author, which I highly recommend reading, that from our hometown Houston, Brené Brown, she's a psychologist. Dr. Brené Brown, she she goes out there and does research on things that we don't want to talk about, shame. And she mentions how shame is an epidemic, and it is. It's this internal battle that is unseen by the eye. We all can relate as humans of what pain is like, what suffering is like. And that internal suffering, there's a level of like stigma. And so like I really love that you have this platform to like talk about things that are hard to talk about, that we have to dismantle it and break the barriers of shame through conversation. And that's what pulls me. It's like after teaching kids, and I've only been really teaching kids since 2015. I really thought they hate me. Like kids are scary. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
We were kids, and I won't swear because kids may listen. But we were like middle school, whatever. And I was stubborn, and I was just all about self-indulged, and it's hard for middle school. And honestly, in this day, in current age with the rise in technology, like there's a great use of social media, but there's also barriers with social media, and that's where like parents and millennials, like in my generation, and just adults can look out for, where we can see these are signs, these are things we can do, and it can be very simple. And I think it's just practice awareness. We can all do that, whether you practice yoga or not, is just being mindfully aware, taking a moment. I remember I grew up in I'm first generation. My parents came from the Philippines.
Okay.
And I grew up in Texas, homies,
Oh, yeah.
go Houston. And it's pretty diverse in Houston, but there's cliques in middle school, right?
Oh.
You try to find where you belong.
Most
You're creating your sense of identity. And not until I, fast forward to now, not until I taught middle school for the first time as a new educator, that I actually see in the trenches of a teacher what they're dealing with. Like people will never know unless you're a teacher,
Right. Yeah.
what it's like. They're doing it all. They're managing kids. They're literally teaching them life skills, social skills. And I taught health, and it was the most mind-blowing and hardest job I've ever had. And I've tried different hats. Like we're very similar. You've got jack of all trades.
Yeah.
And again, I loved middle school because I was pulled by it. I was pulled to, when you have that at night, like I have to do it because I don't know why. It's not logical, you know what I mean? But I have to. during the pandemic to go to school and to pursue this degree. And when I knew I had ADHD, I knew that I was possible because, like, if I knew this, then I can ask for the resources I need to be able to complete this. But back to middle school, when I was brought back to middle school, like it brought me back. Oh yeah, you know what I mean? But you're cooler now because you're the teacher. And
Yeah.
you know what I mean? You have a say.
Uh-huh.
And and it's funny because back then in middle school in the '80s, which, like, you can relate. It's I was the weird one.
Oh, yeah.
Which was like negative and bad. There's a negative connotation. I used to stutter. I was very self-conscious.
Okay.
And I grew up with a lot of shame. I love my family. I think and they did the best they can, but I think there's these generational traditions that my parents took from their past parents, and therefore bring to their kids who were born in America. And so being American or Asian American, it was really hard growing up, especially in middle school, where I was trying to find my place in the world.
Right.
And I was comparing my life as an American, but also comparing my life to being Asian, and not really knowing, am I Asian? Like, or am I Pacific Islander? Also knowing, like, who am I?
Right, yeah.
And it was so hard. And I remember I got bullied, and I had a lot of Caucasian friends, blue-eyed, blonde hair, and I also had, an Asian group as well.
Right.
And so I'd bounce back and forth. But I remember just being called the names that I was called about how I looked.
Right.
And that just, as a youth, you carry that with you. And, growing up, my parents did the best they could, right? I'll never know the struggles. But what happens, and I don't speak for everybody in the AAPI, but I can say that there's this level of stigma and shame to talk about mental health, especially growing up Catholic.
Oh, yeah.
And no good or bad, I think there is a level of, I love Jesus. I love that you can pray, but I also know that there's other resources that could help support mental illness in conjunction. And nothing is shameful about that.
Right.
And I think I didn't know that was possible in the '80s. I think what's awesome now is that we're able to talk about that. I think I would wish and hope in the future that there'll be a bigger curriculum. I'm hoping,
Right.
like, I could be a part of that to talk more about life skills. I mean, I wish we could have talked more about empathy and compassion and social health and well-being
Right.
and empathy and self-talk, which was huge for me, which I found out more about in my late 20s and 30s. But if I could know that when I was in middle school,
Right.
like, what a difference. Or know how to be mindful and breathe. What a difference. So yeah, there's a lot of cool, exciting things right now, and I see, like, a brighter future because the kids do.
Yeah.
Like, I think the great thing about social media, and I'm going off on a tangent, which I warned you,
Please.
is that the great use of social media is that we're able to share ideas all over the world, to know that we're not alone. Like, things we're dealing with here in the U.S. I have a cousin in Japan. Japan has increase in suicide and depression. And, there's a demographics of Japanese where they hole up and isolate. And I remember I get seasonal affective disorder, depression, and I get a lot. I have bouts of, like, it's like a fun roller coaster, And I'm like, oh, I got a call, and I can't deny it because all I know is I have to reach out.
Yeah.
And I've only known that because deep down inside I know I want to live, even though my brain says it's so tiring. Like, just stay
Right.
down. Like, you have to sleep, you have to eat, you have to get out, you have to like, all the things take so much energy. Just, like, end it. And I know that I need to live. Like, that pulls me deep
Yeah.
to my fiber being. But to know that we can know what's going on in different parts of the world and know that we're not alone in this human condition
Right.
helps us to know we can talk about this. And it takes courage, but we have that in our being,
Yeah.
because I wouldn't be here.
Yeah. There's a lot of Asian American friends that I have from different aspects of the Asian continent or Asian background, but some of the overarching, especially so again, I grew up in the '80s and '90s, and in there, I think I think not, maybe I can't say all, but a lot of these stigmas are starting to, I think we're starting to understand how potentially dangerous they are, like the expectations we put on kids or the expectations we put on ourselves. But with my friends of Asian American descent or Asian descent, there is a level of expectation put on a lot of these kids that I had no idea the level, the depth, the intensity that it can reach. The expectations of hitting a, like, you have to be a 4.0 student, you have to know multiple languages, you have to do this, you have to do that. And if you don't, you're basically shunned as a child in that family, you know, and that is so hard to deal with. Letting your, because in our lives, and when we're kids especially, our parents are everything to us. They're our life, they're our bread, they're our butter, they're everything to us, they're our everything. And if we're not living up to their expectations, that's fucking hard, you know. And that's a really hard thing to and if those expectations are unrealistic, you know, it's even harder, you know. So, you know, and there's and with school too, you know, there's, you know, schools do the best they can. They're trying, you know, but to be fair too, a lot of the things that have shown to help with mental health and suicide prevention are the things that are being taken away from schools, like music programs and art programs and all these like social health programs. A lot of these things are what's being put on the budget chopping block because we need to teach math and science and social studies and all these like core subjects. But what we're also seeing is like there's a lot of studies that are out now that show that there's a link between your ability to understand music and art and how that leads to your deeper ability to understand math and sciences and physics and chemistry, right? You need one to fuel the other. They link together. They're not separate. So as we go through and we start taking out all of our arts programs and our music programs and all these you know, these creative type programs that we have that help us get out of these mental states that we get in, because we can draw the way out of it. We can write a song about the way we feel. We can write a poem about it, right? And a lot of times we just need to get that shit out. We just need to get it out of our head, get it out of our soul onto something tangible so we can burn it, throw it away, or fucking do whatever with it, right? But now we're taking our abilities to have those skills developed away, you know, in a classroom setting, right? Now, that doesn't mean that, you know, there's like TikTok and Instagram and all these things now that you can watch tutorials on how to do all this shit. But why aren't we making it core curriculum? Why are we taking that shit away, you know? And the other thing, too, is with bullying. Like, bullying, it used to be like, hey, Adam, like, I was a heavy kid, right? So I used to get, hey, Adam, you're fat, right? And I would see this all the time. Like, I would see the kid tell me the thing and run away and, you know, laugh about it with his friends, right? There's still, like, a humanistic way of looking at somebody in the eye, telling them something disparaging about themselves and seeing how they react, right? Now, that might not change immediately my desire to call you fat, but if I see myself call you fat and then I see how that reacts with you, you start crying, you turn timid, you go small, like whatever those reactionary things are, I'm physically seeing that as a human being. So even if I'm not affected by it now, subconsciously, my subconscious is like, oh, dude, why did you make that child feel that way? Like, did you really want to make that person cry? You know, and so like that might not stop me right then, but that's a thought that starts going through my head. Now we have text message. Now we have Instagram. Now we have all these ways to non-verbally, personally fuck with people. Right? We can put people down. We can send texts. We can send memes, disparaging pictures, and all this shit. And we don't get to see the reaction of the person that we're sending that to. We just say, hey, I'm going to text this picture of a fat person, and then underneath I'm going to say, Adam, you're fat. Send. And then I get to just put my phone down and walk away. I don't get to see the effect that has on somebody. So now I'm not really subconsciously getting that trigger of saying, hey, that might be fun right now, but like that was not fucking cool. All right. The way you just made that human feel is not fucking cool. And now I don't have that visual response to show me that shit.
And see, and I'm so glad you brought this up. So many gems you've talked about. And then one of the things that really came up was empathy. I think that, and then Brené Brown talks about this too in one of her books. Like one of them is, I thought it was just me. It was one of her books. And it talks about shame and that we have to have the courage and compassion. But I'll also add empathy too. I remember talking about empathy in the curriculum last year when I was teaching health to middle school, 7th grade.
Right.
And I would keep bringing up empathy more than a handful of times to remind them to what that was like and what it would be like. And we'd do skits and we'd write in our journals to debrief about what it would feel like if someone did this to you, or what if you were, all alone and you didn't have any friends, and everybody else was invited to go to a party except for you, and then you accidentally went on social media and saw them having fun, and then your name was mentioned, like, glad he's not here, she's not here, and like, what would that feel like?
Right.
And one of the main things that I had my kids do that made a huge difference with honestly, their quality of education and learning was journaling. And it was something that there was some pushback, and that's okay. I mean, middle school, right? Like I gotta meet them where they are, but also know that I was working in a very affluent Southeast Asian dense population. So I was really present to how everyone wanted to get on their phones and laptops, and like that's pretty common, I think, nowadays too, to get on your phone. But there is a no phone policy, which was awesome. But the laptops, they walked in and they wanted to get into the laptops. And I'm like, nope, no laptops. We're going to do breathing and journaling. And I think once, after a few weeks and after they got into the routine of that's what's expected in the beginning of class, they started to share in their journals what that was like to breathe. And before, they would be silly and breathe like, this is so silly, what do we do, this is stupid. And I'm like, okay, sure, just do it, right? And they did it, and then it came, this was fascinating and so exciting, not expected, but they wanted to lead it. I want to be the one who does it. And we came up with a cool name, like, who wants to be the peacemaker, all right? And so they would lead the breathing, and it was cool to see them take leadership to bring this to their friends and fellow classmates and become more like a community where they can breathe, be present to like their breath, but also like how they feel is okay, where they are is okay, and be still. And I'm really interested in how the brain works, because with technology, something happens with the development of youth and their brains, and as far as how it develops, especially the frontal lobe, where that's all our executive functioning, our decision making, how we make sense of the world. But if we could breathe and actually calm her down, be more creative, and like doodle. I love when they doodled, and I didn't make them wrong, no shame. Like, doodle, do it.
Yeah.
Just try to pay attention. All right, just try, do your best. It really helped them. Those two, so simple: journaling, writing, drawing, breathing, had them be more calm. I remember this kid, I read through their journals because I would grade them. Yep, we totally grade this.
Yeah.
This is graded. Yep, sure is. Yep. Oh, yeah, every week. So they definitely had to do it.
Yeah.
Which, sometimes just have to. And then in the end, they would just come in, automatically get the journals, no laptops, know they have to breathe, and know they had a journal prompt. But it had them like actually slow down and be present to like what life was like right now, and so that, hey, I'm really anxious because I'm going home to my parents and I have A minus, and I'm scared. But breathing really helped me to become more calm and to be less afraid.
Yeah.
Like not even a little bit. Those are huge.
It's huge, most definitely.
And I think, like, I was glad, I wasn't really strict and grading. Like, hey, just write a word, just do something,
Yeah.
The date, just, have your name on the front, please. Just having them have that practice to learn how to put pen to paper and have thoughts come out of their head onto the paper, having them see that is such not old school, it's just a way to debrief and unload what goes on around us, because the world goes so fast in the U.S. And so I digress, but basically, just being aware that kids do need to have creativity. They do need space to be still and breathe and slow down, because we're all human. We're in these ancient bodies that still need what it needs, which is to breathe effectively, to slow down, and to be able to tap into their creative side.
Yeah. Well, especially I think there's, we have these somatic responses that we now know that can help our bodies, right? Like you were saying, meditation, breath work, we can up and down regulate our bodies by these things, right? And these are, I mean, I think they're starting to become more normalized now in certain aspects of teaching. But even with that, it's about how you present it. You know, I have teachers that teach, friends that teach in public schools that wanted to introduce sound healing into their classrooms, but the mistake that this person used was using the word ritual, you know. And the word ritual, a lot of times, especially if you're triggered by spirituality or by something other than religion, then that word's ritual can mean witchcraft, can mean like all these pagan things, which is not what it means, right? So a lot of times, like, even though we're seemingly welcome to this idea, if you use the wrong verbiage around it, it gets demonized right away, right? Especially in the public school systems. So it's a lot about how you present it. And also with that, like, I think there's an age window of when kids won't do something because they feel silly. Right.
Yeah.
And so, but if we can start to introduce breath work, introduce like when you be like, so with my youngest daughter, Harper, I think we had this experience when she was 11. So she's 13 now. But we were walking by a river, and there was like a little garter snake that just slithered in front of her. Not poisonous at all, but you know, humans are fucking afraid of snakes, right? And so she immediately went into that fight or flight. She panicked. She started like almost hyperventilating, and like she's crying, and I'm like, I didn't know what was going on. I was right next to her. And so finally I'm like, okay, what's going on? She told me what happened. And you know, there's responses that animals have when they have built up anxiety. Once they're in a safe place, they can shake, right? If like a gazelle's being chased by a lion, the gazelle ends up getting away, and then the gazelle, once it feels safe, it'll shake violently for almost like 10 seconds, and then it's fine, and it trots off, and it's like, hey, I'm a gazelle again. Get rid of that energy. But we have to be in that place to get rid of that energy, right? And so I tried to get Harper to do that at the time, and we were by ourselves, and she didn't want to do it because she didn't want to feel silly. She's like, yeah. I'm like, just shake your hands, shake your feet, you know, just like, yeah, I'll close my eyes, I'll turn around. She's like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm like, this is going to make you feel better, right? This is going to help you expend that energy. And she was very adamant about not doing it. Eventually we did, and that was fine, and she understood. But again, there's that window of like, I don't want to feel silly, especially if we're around our friends, you know. How am I going to just breathe like that? Like John over there is not breathing like that. Why am I going to breathe like that, you know? So if we start normalizing this at such a young age, then it becomes normal part of their life, and then everybody's quote unquote silly together, and then we're all fucking healthier, right? So I think if we can start to normalize this stuff at a younger age, which it seems like it's getting done, but it's still not on a mass level. You know, we're learning all these arbitrary dates about like when things were signed and when somebody discovered a fucking country that wasn't even theirs to discover. But we're not taught how to use this goddamn body that we're all blessed with. You know, like, when can we switch that? When can we switch our curriculum and have a human health, have a human curriculum, and then pepper in all the other stuff that we need, right? But we need to know how to use this goddamn body first.
Ain't that the truth? You know, I mean, please, I know I don't know if you'll ever have more kids, but like, I approve you having children. Like, yes, it's just, we can't, okay, for my own personal opinion, we have to go with the times and flow with how life is changing in this modern world to meet kids where they are. And I think that's where we're missing something really important and special, is being able to meet them where they are. And that means being able to present information that seems weird, different, in a way that they can consume, that has them like, okay, they'll try it. And that's where we have to think outside the box. And that's where we have to come together and unite as teachers to see, okay, how can we relate information that has them know this is important for life. And if I knew this at your age, man, life is hard, but life would be manageable. And I think one of the most important things that I've learned from being with teachers and being with healers and being in a structured environment called education in the US is to know that I may not change the box, but you can cause a ripple to expand the box. And if you can't break a box in one part of the state or community or district, don't give up. Don't give up the fight, because to me, I was thinking about my why, and like, yeah, I'd love to have more freedom on the weekends and be able to sleep when I want to, but all in all, it's my purpose is to know that, man, I have a niece and two nephews. I have friends who are parents. Like, I care about youth. I think after being immersed in schools, I just I love them so much. It was so hard to like let go of 130 kids. Like, oh my
Yeah,
God,
I
I love you
bet.
so much. And like I love teachers so much and people who educate, people who heal because we need to take care of these humans because they are the ones who have the most time with our youth.
Yeah.
And these are the ones who are going to carry our community, carry our legacy,
Yeah.
and that's the bigger picture. And so for me it's like, man, it's like finding the tribe or community that supports the vision and to not giving up and to make sure we meet the right people, the lawmakers, the one who can change, to know that this makes a difference, because it's possible.
Yeah.
Like anything's possible if you
yeah.
put your mind to it. We've come so far. I mean, like 50 years ago to now, and we're still growing, and we still have people who are passionate, who want to change.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we need to drive those passions. That's actually there's something that concerns me about the teaching industry, teaching field right now, is that a lot of people are so disgruntled and so turned off and disenfranchised by the teaching field because of coming out of COVID and having to do all these new restrictions and what can and can't be done and all the hoops that we have to jump through, and also the uptick in anxiety for parents and kids, right?
Yeah.
There's so much like being put on these teachers now that a lot of the teachers that I've spoken to that 2 or 3 years ago had these amazing, like very cool, innovative ways to approach teaching and how to like connect with kids and how to like, throw away homework and we're doing this something different. We're doing all these different things, trying shit new, are now leaving the field because they're so pissed about what's going on in the teaching field. They're not making enough money. They're getting verbally and physically assaulted. Now they have their fucking school shootings all the time. Like there's no security to keep teachers in this field to further their knowledge, to push the envelope, right? There's this not theory, but there's this idea that when people in the upper echelon of their field start to move out, whether it's being they retire or they pass away, it leaves openings for all these new information and all this new stuff to start to come through, because a lot of times, whether they realize it or not, the people that are the higher echelon of that field are the ceilings, right? So a lot of the ideas get bounced back because they're not in line with those people's ideas. A lot of the methodologies get bounced back because their methodology is already standardized, right? But one of the things, like the examples that I've received was like Albert Einstein, for example. When he passed away, quantum physics and physics blew up and exploded in ways we never would have seen, because Albert Einstein was a ceiling, and a lot of that stuff that was going against his theory of relativity, all these ideas that he developed, now he's not there to squash him anymore or to put his whatever connotation on it, and all these other ideas start to flourish. There's not that uptick of ideas now because a lot of the people are just getting disenfranchised with that industry and saying, fuck it, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to go into psychology. I'm going to go into some other field of help, still helping humans. But like, if we're not in a place where we can develop very caring humans to meet these children on a level of where they need to be met at and not an expectation of where they think they should be at, then I think we're just perpetuating this fucking problem that we have and not actually coming with any solutions.
I mean, you said it. I think that, I mean, like, we see teachers and we know they do a lot. And yeah, the pandemic really showcased all the things they had to manage with being on Zoom, being able to manage kids on Zoom and manage. I mean, some teachers have over 100 kids.
Right.
100 kids, where we are present to being inclusive. We're present to changes in identity for youth these days with pronouns. We're seeing change, and we're also forgetting that each child is an individual that needs individual attention. And I won't lie, I think that something's going to happen where there's going to be I mean, the sciences, English, like a lot of math, a lot of the main subjects that are core curriculum, something's gonna happen where they'll be present, the ones with power in education, like, okay, there's something going on, like it's impacting, the economy in such a way that we have to pay attention to the ones who want to change it. when I taught health, and I was able to teach PE when they needed support, because I mean, everybody was surviving. Everybody was trying to put out their own fire. I mean, coming from a healing background, not used to this structured environment, I was very present to the thickness of energy that I could cut it with a knife. It was just so intense that I got pulled into the fire. Sleeping on the side of the road. It was like working more than I ever worked, and
Right.
was so fatigued and tired. But I was just like putting, passion propelled profession. Let me tell you. And these teachers are like, they're getting up early to like get the classroom ready, look at the curriculum, make sure they have everything in order. Then when they get to work, they have to make copies, get the technology up too, because there's new tech stuff too,
Right,
new
yeah.
platforms. It's always changing, evolving. And then you have the meetings, and sometimes they're planned late, and then you have like parents, and then you have the emails, and then you have class, and then you have like a little break between transitions of classes. Then you have maybe like a block, and then you have to eat lunch. And some schools, you can't, like during the pandemic, you couldn't leave until someone could watch. Like I don't even know. So I another story, but I have to use the bathroom quite often because I have one kidney.
Okay.
And that's another story. And so when I drink, I have to always have my gallon of water a day, and I would have to go to the bathroom, but you have to have coverage. You can't leave the kids by themselves.
Right, yeah.
And so that's one little challenge.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how do we take care of our teachers to help them be at their best, to be able to serve our children, who are the ones who are going to carry our communities? And the thing is, the joke's on us that health and PE is going to help to just propel the sciences, to help propel the math, help
Right.
propel, because it helps everything. It helps your body, helps your brain, helps everything.
Yeah.
It's everything.
Yep.
It's just interesting that it's hard to understand for me as someone who's a mover
Yeah.
to come into this profession. That I don't blame teachers for leaving. I mean, some of them are there for 10, 20 years, God bless them.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. And it's really hard. I mean, I think we're at a place now where we have different understandings of how the body works. Like we now know that, just for like a basic dumb example, like we now know that cigarettes are not a health food, right? Cigarettes used to be branded as something healthy, right? That's why Camel Lights.
Now it's
and, like,
vapors.
right? So, but we know how the body responds and acts, and we're still not really changing curriculum
do.
to understand that.
Youth don't.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Though. It's
oh,
like we, as an overarching, like we as a system now,
Yeah.
know, and there's schools, like you can go to individualized private schools, Montessori schools within the states, but there's also like whole countries that are now changing their way of
great news.
addressing schools,
Yeah,
like Denmark and shit like that.
Yeah.
But it's not happening on a mass scale over in the states,
slow.
where we're one of the most progressive, quote unquote, progressive countries in the
Mm.
world. Right, but we're not looking at how to better take care of our children and how to mass scale and how to like overhaul the school systems to where we can teach self-love and teach movement practices and teach all these things that we now know is really, really good for us. Teach the fact that like the more we normalize talking about difficult things, they don't become difficult, they don't become taboo. And when we can talk openly about stuff like this, we're talking about suicide awareness, but also like, cancer or menstruating or puberty. Fucking hell. I mean, talking about, if you could openly talk about puberty as a child with your teachers
Yeah.
and with your the kids around you, puberty's fucking awkward, man. Some people get it. Some people hit puberty when they're 8. Some people don't until they're like 17.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Think about in just a dumb example, but think like as a young boy walking around a locker room naked, and you have some men that are covered in hair and some boys that are like completely bald still
Oh my
and
gosh,
everywhere.
yeah.
And the boys that are covered in hair are like, hey, puberty, and they're looked up upon, and look at that guy, he can grow a mustache, he's got hair on his testicles. But they're going to make fun of the kid in the corner that doesn't have a lick of hair on him. There's nothing wrong with that child. His biology's just built a little bit differently, right? But if that child can like have an open forum to talk about, like maybe the kid that's full of hair feels a little awkward because he, in his head he looks like an ape, but he's the one that's being built up and aggrandized. And look at him, like he's mature, he's macho. And that's an overarching statement. That's a blanket statement. I'm not saying everybody thinks that way. But
Yeah.
again, I grew up in the 80s, and I was a late bloomer, and I was the kid that got made fun of for not having hair on his testicles, and was like looking at the kid with hair on his chest being like, when am I going to get hair on my chest? And so like, again, like we normalize that shit, and we can get in front of a lot of these quote unquote mental problems that we're looking at.
I mean, honestly, like from the 80s to now, nothing, a lot hasn't changed around shame and around comparison.
Right.
I mean, at that age, I mean, I remember I was ahead of the game in my age, and I was shamed because I was, more pronounced in the chest area,
Okay.
and I would hunch over because I was so ashamed.
Oh, okay.
And I was really dark, so I got made fun of and called, all sorts of names like
Mm.
monkey, and made fun of like how my face looked because I was, I'm Filipino American, with Spanish roots and some Chinese over there, a little splash of that.
Yeah.
But it's like if we could just empathy, I swear, the courage, compassion, empathy, that word just. And that was again when I was teaching the kids about empathy. There's also the talk about respect, which was a vocab word that we had to delve more into because it wasn't just a word.
Yeah.
It's respect. It's acceptance. It's being able to be like, hey, guess what? This is the case covering I'm in right now, and it looks a certain way. And you could, create an understanding of who I am by the color of my skin, the shape of my nose, how I speak, how big I am, whatever it is. But know that there's more past that. And then the thing is, as humans, we want to feel safe around people. And I think as youth, all they know is like what they see is what they get.
Right.
And they don't know the questions to ask or the social cues, the social intelligence. All right. I mean, really cool idea that I brought to the kids was, okay, I want you to let me know what you'd like to know, what you'd like me to teach you in this semester of health.
Okay.
And I remember, again, like there is a big need for teachers. I mean, they had gone through 11 substitutes before I got there, and they're like teachers were filling in when they can,
Right.
and for humans, we all need to nourish ourselves and rest, and so it happens, and like everyone's doing the best they can. But when I went in, the number one topic that was in every journal, like more than 50% across over 100 journals, because I read every one all night
Right.
with no wine, totally because school day, was social health. And it was funny because we took a lot of time around mental and emotional health. Like it could not be rushed.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of great counselors there to help me. God bless them, counselors. But social health, and I mean, it stems from like who we are as social creatures, as human beings. I mean, how do we meet another person? How do we get to know another person? How do we trust another person? Right? And there's a level of like, what's character? What's personality? What's empathy? What's respect? Right? And then emotions. I mean, there's so much involved in being social creatures that our youth don't know anything about, a lick about. Thank God we're adults. Like we're fully, thank God for most days. But we have a fully, developed frontal lobe. We have some experience. I mean, I've had 38 years of living as an adult,
Right.
or as a human being on this earth to like pick up a few things and cues. But youth like really are leaning on to adults. And if we could have adults be a space like you are for your daughter, where I'm safe, I'm here for you, just come as you are and whatever you need.
Yeah.
You want to make a new friend, you're being bullied, or you want to talk to that person because you're interested, let's talk about it. That's all they want.
Right. Yeah.
And so, I loved that they had questions and they were so eager to know how to make friends, how to maintain friendships, how to sustain friendships, how to confront confrontations. We did a lot of skits, improv, a lot of that.
That's great.
They loved it.
That's great.
And I think that's where you have to balance it. Like, okay, there's definitely things you need to ingrain as far as like, research and book knowledge and that kind of stuff. But there's also stuff you can't learn, like emotional and mental, social health that you have to do.
You have to experience.
Yeah.
I love that you're putting them through skits like that. I've talked about this on this podcast before about shit that we didn't learn when we were growing up, and how do we fill that in. And one of the things that kind of came up was the inability to have conversations. And a lot of times, so I worked at a restaurant. One of the last restaurants I worked at was where the only job where we employed under 18-year-olds. So I had a couple 16, 17-year-old hosts and hostesses, busters, stuff like that. And this was 2018, 2019, so just a couple of years ago. And the thing that I really noticed, because I only had my kids as a qualifier or my friends' kids, and things like that. So I didn't have like big, sample pot to look at as far as like this thing I'm going to talk about. But once I started working with these kids, it was very, very blatantly obvious. So the inability to have conversations with people they didn't know, and that was very, very black and white. So let's take a couple 16-year-old gentlemen, not boys, that were fantastic. I love them to death. They were so personable. Like, it took them a while to get to know me, but I took that as I'm the boss, right? I was the GM. I was the person that wrote schedules, hire, fire, blah, blah, blah. So like, I already have to cut through that as myself and to say like, okay, that's a hat I wear. Cool. I don't like to wear that hat. So let's put that over there. Right now I'm just Adam. I'm Adam. I'm just the Adam guy with the beard and a man bun, right? And so create these relationships with these gentlemen and ladies too, and it was great. And then I remember the first rush that we had after I'd really gotten to know these kids, gentlemen and ladies, that so like a group of 10 comes in, and these three 16-year-olds were sitting there. They were my hosts, and we're having a conversation, joke, hey, laugh, and then people come in, and all of a sudden I'm like, I'm the only one up here. Like, where'd everybody go? Like, what's going on? And the three people that were with me were like huddling in a corner, like kind of like pretending to do shit around the computer. Like, oh, Adam will greet them. I'm like, no, get over here and let's talk to people, right? This is that's your job, right? Hey, thanks for coming to Diamond Knot. How many people would you like, right? How many people are in your party? That's all you got to really say. But that initial, like, that fear, that just like, holy shit, like, I don't know what to do. A lot of that is because like the way our communication is different, right? We're used to, like, when we were kids, we didn't have iPhones and all this shit. Like, we had to go talk to people. Like, if I wanted something from a restaurant, like, I had to get off my ass at whatever age. My mom would make me go over to the waitress and be like, "Excuse me, miss, could I have a straw? I didn't get a straw, please." But that taught me like self-confidence of so like, true. That lady's not going to yell at me for whatever story I have in my head about what she's going to say, right? So the way that we communicate is very different. We're used to sending texts, we're used to, Instagramming and all this shit. We don't see people in person. So, that was something that I got to work with these young adults with, is like how to have conversations. And so like, so we started thinking about like, how do you train that? How do you have this without having everybody mandate to take a speech class, right?
Right.
Because if we're nixing electives, speech is definitely something that, is important, but not everybody's going to have. So having these opportunities to create skits, to create these conversational moments of, there's not a script in front of me. I'm going to go off of my emotions, and sometimes those are good and sometimes those are bad. I'm going to go off the information that I have, again, sometimes good and sometimes bad, but we leave it open to the idea that we're going to learn from these conversations, that I'm not trying to convince you that my point is right, and you're not trying to convince me that my point is wrong. I'm just sharing information from my side, you're sharing information from your side, and then from there, we find some kind of resolution. Like, and I think it's very overarching now where we look at, and not to bring up political stuff, but like the mask, non-mask mandates, right? Just because I agree or disagree with or without wearing a mask, and you might have the counter view, doesn't mean I don't like you. Doesn't mean that I'm against everything else that you stand for. Doesn't mean that I'm going to be like, oh, fucking Melissa wants to wear a mask, we'll get that fucking sheeple.
Asshole.
Right? It's like, that's not always it. So when we can normalize these ways to have conversations, then we don't further that narrative of separation of me versus you. And then that separation narrative sometimes turns into those thoughts of, why am I here? What's the fucking point?
Yeah, right? That's good, man. Whew. Well, I mean, like, thank God you were there to be a leader. I bet that was an instrumental part for them to learn on how to actually communicate effectively, what to look out for by like watching you in action. And then being able to, knowing you, you're a safe space. Like, really, people just unload on you. Like, oh, wow, did you just show up? And for kids to have someone for you to like level up, because I know no matter if I'm from, whatever culture I'm at, I think youth put adults on a pedestal, especially when they have a level of power. Because youth, a lot of their life, they're being told what to do, what to wear, what to see, say. Just the amount of suppression and aggression for the youth that we have, that they have modes of social media to express stuff, which is great. And it just brings me back to when I was a youth in the 80s. We never talked about our feelings.
Right.
I already knew at a very early age I was different. People called me weird, and I'm like, well, yeah, I know I am weird. Yeah, I am different, and like I didn't like it
Right.
because I was different, so I would sleep a lot. I got really depressed a lot. I was anxious, and sometimes that was like, it's not bad to be anxious, right? Stress is happens. Our body, deals with stress. It grows with stress, and like there's a level of healthy anxiety and also debilitating anxiety.
Right.
I remember when I was talking to a fellow teacher. Her daughter was dealing with general anxiety disorder, just got diagnosed, and she's like, "Man, I had no idea until it happened closer to home of what it was like for someone to deal with debilitating anxiety."
Right.
And there comes that empathy again, is knowing that, hey, there are people out there, and every day I have to manage it myself. And a lot of that is being able to be mindful and attentive to like those internal thoughts, because a lot of what you say to yourself, I mean, saved my life. Saved my life when you can discern if you could say negative and positive. Negative as like, Melissa, you should just end your life. To positive, like, you should just call a friend. Like,
Right.
right? Like
Yeah.
helpful, empowering. It all starts within you. And if you could discern, okay, this is a stressful situation. I am socially anxious. My heart is racing. I can't breathe. Oh, I'm hunched over. Oh, I'm not breathing I'm breathing shallow and fast. Okay, well, I know Adam, who was my GM, he told me just take a deep breath and know that I'm worthy and I'm capable. And he
Yeah.
believes in me. Like, that's how I actually got into yoga, and also believed in myself, was having others seeing the power within me
Right.
that I didn't see. I trusted that. And then I started to, change that internal dialogue to know, hey, this is good stress. This is me doing something scary, but like, there's no polar bear chasing me, or I'm not on fire. My arms are like attached. I'm good. Knowing like this is good stress, and I'm learning. And then to like have the courage to take a deep breath, trust that you can do it, and then approach the situation head on, knowing, okay, and then discerning the the abnormal levels of anxiety,
Right.
and knowing what to do then.
Right. But not feeling ashamed for just having those feelings. Like
Nothing,
normalize the
no.
fact that, like, yeah, like you said, anxiety, depression, like those are normal things that
Yeah.
we go through. Like we're gonna feel anxious, we're gonna feel depressed. We just don't want to live there. Right? Those are all emotions that need to be expressed, that need to be understood. But the more that we hide from them and that we don't want to talk about them, that's when they become the behaviors that we end up having to deal with in a very dramatic way sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that society has conditioned us not to talk about,
Right.
the stigma. And I think, I mean, there are around like 20 million or so Americans in the U.S., and we're a diversifying culture, come from all different parts of the world, and the resources out there. Let me tell you, therapy. I mean, didn't know of the power of therapy until I was in college. I didn't know that what I was dealing with was like, actually, you're not the only one. Here's some resources. Here's a group you could talk to. I'm like, what? And I mean, it is a good that we actually have curriculum slowly being introducing things like racism and negative self-talk and microaggressions and things like that. Like, I didn't know anything.
No,
Like,
no.
what is that? And that there are teachers out there of color actually talking about their experiences, bringing empathy. Because there are people out there who'll never experience what my life was like.
Totally.
Just like I'll never experience what life was like for you. But the more we talk, people can get an idea. Oh, what was that like?
Yeah.
And so I think through conversation, such a powerful thing.
Yeah. Open the conversations
Yeah.
up. Yeah. So I think if you don't mind, I'd love to talk about some of the things some of the warning signs we could look at, for anybody that's in suicidal state, and then things that we can do to help. First, I want to start with a quote from Jordan Peterson, who I love Jordan Peterson a lot. One of the quotes that he has about suicide is don't underestimate the hole your absence will leave. I think that's a big one that when I have those thoughts, it's like, it's so easy. No one's going to miss me. I feel like this I feel like this about myself. Right. I can say that narrative for me changed once I had kids. That didn't really hold so true because, I feel the impact that my kids have on my life and how much I have on their life. And, I can honestly say that the thoughts that I did have at time were curtailed by the fact that I have kids, and I don't want to give them that example, right? That you can just stop it whenever you want to, and that it'll be fine, because it's not. So I think there is that we don't realize how much of an impact we are and we have, whether you feel like you have nothing in this world and you've lost everything. There's still somebody that cares about you. There's an impact, that there's a person you haven't even met yet, right? That you could impact, or that could impact you. You could be the saver of somebody's life if you just hang on for one more day. And that could change your entire being, right? So we never really fully embrace and understand the impact of the life we have, because we don't even remember how many people we've touched, let alone how much of an impact we've made in people's lives that we don't even know. Like the stranger that you held the door for one day, that like nobody in their person's mind has done anything for them at all ever, and now you've just held the door for them, and that's just changed their life. That might have been their why to stay alive that day. The homeless person you gave a quarter to, or just had a conversation with, right? Just gave a hug to, right? You have no idea the impact that has on that person's life, right? So when we just think it's so dismissive of like, no one's gonna miss me, you have no idea.
No, that brings me back to when I was I was in a relationship that wasn't very healthy. And I remember, there's so many things being told to me that were just put downs. And, you could say that was abuse, whatever, but to put into to a box. But something happens where, you're around a certain environment where you start to get into your own head, and you start to go down that rabbit hole. And my own experience is going to be different from anybody else's, because there's a wide spectrum of like what depression looks like. But to just imagine, for those who don't understand, of getting to a point where your body, which is meant to your body wants to keep you alive. That is what it's here. That's why we have our central nervous system, so we can feel pain. Doesn't want that. And that there's a level of pain that no one can see inside that has people contemplate suicide. Is so painful. And so for me, there's a recipe. And I remember when I had kids come up to me and ask me, hey, I need to talk. As a teacher, I'm not equipped to counsel them, but I can listen. And I also know there are resources that are available for them that they don't know of. And I think as an adult, it's our responsibility. It is our responsibility to be aware of the youth and of people, just for each other. It's just as a citizen of this world.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And I think sometimes we get so involved with our own issues. And I think you brought up a good point of what can we do to change the conversation, to know that there are ways there's a red flag. Oh, there's a red flag. And know, how do we help someone without being awkward or shaming that person or calling them out. I love Dr. Jordan Peterson. He's definitely a whistleblower who just talks and shares things that we need to hear. And so there's so many great resources out there, and I'm glad that there's great social media platforms that psychologists go on, that there's tips and hashtags. The people who don't want to speak out want to do their own research first. Was there a question? There was a question.
No, I think it's more of an overarching statement.
I think for me, I remember when I was in that relationship, I remember that I was like, okay, what is one way to go where it's not painful? I didn't really like pain. I'm really a wuss. Working out and yoga, that's painful. And I know I need it to keep the chaos quiet and to show up to be my best self for what I am here for. But I remember I actually knew the power of yoga, and I knew and you can't unknow the things that really change your life, right? I knew people loved me. I was like, F it, God, like there it was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and it was wintertime, and I just moved in with this ex, and I remember I just got really depressed, and I just couldn't show up. I just had such intense social anxiety that just walking out of my apartment just like petrified me, which is crazy because people see me as this very bright, shiny, extroverted person.
Totally, yeah.
Surprise. Like I love being happy and I love being joyful. And I also know that when I don't take care of myself, there's a certain part of me that just isolates and hides. And I remember I was a personal trainer and active one at the time downtown, and I had such a great, strong team. And my boss was amazing, and he was just he was he was just empathetic. He knew me. He had talks with me, check in with me, and that made a huge difference for me to not feel pressured to hurry back to work. And I had clients that were like very, very empathetic. I was so lucky at that time to have clients who understood.
Yeah.
Because as a coach, I felt a lot of shame. I felt a lot of shame for like, here I am, a beacon of like health and fitness. I can't even show up for my own students. Like, who am I to teach this? So there comes that imposter syndrome, which we all deal with, right?
yeah.
Insecurities. And I remember I was looking out the window. I'm like, man, I could just jump right now. No one would even know. But then there's a car, and that's someone's car, and I would hate to do that to someone's car.
Right.
And this is a window that would cost money. So I start to think about like, because I care about like
Rationale behind it.
yeah, like being a burden, right?
Yep.
And then, I'll just pills. Perfect. Okay. Went to the bathroom, locked the door, and my dog was just staring at me because she followed me in.
Right.
Love emotional support dogs. Here for like canines and any animal, bird, parrot, whatever you need. Cat. And I remember she just stares like, what are you doing? Can we go to bed? Right? I mean, she didn't say that. She just like looked at me like that. And I'm like, reason to stay alive.
Right.
Because it was now 3 o'clock, and like it was slowly like, oh my God, it's gonna get light soon. I better hurry up. Oh, I better write a letter because of all this crap. And like, what a burden to like, my parents to like have to sell, and like I have to make sure I know where this stuff goes.
Right.
There's a lot of crap. And then all of a sudden I saw a picture of my nephew and niece. I'm like, gosh, darn it. And before you know it, it was 4:30, 5 o'clock. The sun was coming up, and I'm like, "There's no time. I have no time."
Yep, that's my window.
And like, I missed the window. And here's the thing: it's like something happens, and I don't know what that was, but it's just I think being able to know that like I was grateful for the people who loved me.
Right.
My brain was like, "Nope, you're not done yet." Even though it's so easy, you're almost. It was the pills were in my hand.
Right.
It was so easy. And I swear, like, I don't know, something stopped me in that instant. And it was like, no, you're not ready yet. That was the voice.
Yeah.
You're not ready yet. And then, like, there comes the faces, the people who loved me. There comes, like, the impact of what you do. And I remember, like, this Christmas movie, The Christmas Story, where, Scrooge, I'm like, dang, I watched that movie all the time in the 80s. Ruined me. And I'm like, Ghost of Christmas, like, what is it? Future? Where, like, if I passed away, what would happen? Or past? Whichever it was. Like, what would the life look like if I wasn't here? Well, I know that, that student wouldn't have the gift of yoga, then they wouldn't be able to, like, go get through their mental health. Or, like, my nephew and niece wouldn't be able to have an aunt who would pick them up for ice cream and give them hugs. And, my parents wouldn't have a daughter that they love so much,
right.
That they call every day. I just, and I think that's what happens.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just if you just are present. Like, I mean, I already was in yoga. I was immersed as a teacher already. So I knew, I was aware of like breathing. I was aware of like mindfulness, that I couldn't deny it.
Yeah, it's like you had the tools.
Yeah, I was so
them
pissed.
now.
I was so pissed that night.
Yep.
But I lived to see another day, so there you go.
Oh yeah. And I think that's a lot of it. It's like our rational brain will start to take over and be like, really? Is this really, start to talk to you about, like, is this really where you want to go? Is this where you really want to be? And I think that's where it's important to know that if we have people to reach out to, it makes it a little bit easier.
It's powerful.
Because then you have, like, it's something to, not necessarily to live for, but, when you have that support, then maybe you can be that support for somebody else, and I think that changes the narrative a bit.
Yeah, I mean, And I will say that I'm blessed. I'm grateful. I know I know there are people out there who feel like whether they're alone, they feel alone. They have no one they think they can call. I will let you know that I had a social worker call me because I had missed a couple of doctor's appointments. And I was like, I don't want to talk on the phone like that. Even the phone scared me. I'm like, nope, nope, no communication whatsoever. I am not alive.
Yeah.
Leave me alone. And he called. He kept freaking calling. I'm like, oh. And like I remember one of my friends telling me once saying, "What if they are like in danger and they like you're the only person they have 2% on their phone and they have to call somebody and it was you." I'm like, dang it! So I had to pick up the damn phone. I'm like, hello, and freaking social worker was like, okay, hey, checking in. Don't hang up. I'm like, dang it.
There you go.
Okay, and he said, like I'm not there to support you, and can you just please just go down to the grocery store and talk to someone? I'm like, fuck, that means I have to get up, put clothes on. God, do I have to do I have to shower? So just go show up and just like see one person and just like say hi.
Yeah.
And it was the hardest thing. But knowing like someone that I didn't know that was a stranger actually cared about me was really confusing. But it like got me out to talk. I went down to Trader Joe's and like and talked to this person who just said hi. I'm like, ha! Ha! In my head. Oh my God. And I was like, breathe, Melissa, because I know how to breathe. Hi. And I'm like, that's weird. Don't be weird, Melissa. Be funny. Be cool. Fuck it. Oops. Edit that out, whatever. But it was just like, that person was like, okay, whatever. He was the right person to be there for me at that time.
Yeah.
To say, hey, what's up? I like your shirt. I'm like, oh, thanks. Oh, thanks. And I was in. And I think that, like, that little bit of humanity and acknowledgement helped to, like, remind me I'm okay. And remind me, okay, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
People
great.
can see me. Okay.
Yeah. And that's what we need sometimes, is just that little maybe external encouragement,
Yeah.
somebody to tell us that we're okay.
Complete strangers.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I think, sometimes
Yeah.
I was a bartender for a long time, and not to say I notably or rememberingly stopped anybody from a suicidal moment,
I don't even know.
but that anonymous person that you can just talk to about your problems. I was that person for a lot of people. People would just sit at my bar and this is what's going on. This is what's going on. A lot of times it was just active listening on my side. Like I wasn't giving advice. I wasn't trying to like help them troubleshoot their problems. I had like a bar full of 20 people that I was trying to attend to. But every time I went over to pour a beer, this person over there would, tell me their story. And, and so, sometimes it is just having an unabashed listener. Not somebody that you want to have advice from, not somebody that you're looking for comfort from, but just somebody just to say things to, and there is something for that too, and your local bartender, bud tender, I'm not putting this on anybody, but like there are people out there that you can just like, just share your wisdom with, share your story with, share your mental anguish with that, that aren't going to judge you. That's just part of them being where they're at right then and there,
Yeah. I mean, I think knowing who you are, there's a practice in like being able to be that space for people.
Right.
And I think there comes a time where there has to be an interest, and I would hope there'd be a place where people can learn how to like, cultivate that heightened awareness. And there's this. I remember when I was really into the growth mindset, and still am.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing about this this young man, maybe an adult now because it was years ago, in Australia, I think.
Okay.
And I could be wrong, but I know it was in either Australia or New Zealand. But he created a movement that celebrities got aware of called the "Are You Okay" Day,
Okay.
where I believe his father died. I believe it was suicide. And just he was so close to his father that he made a day where you stop and say, "Hey, how are you?"
And actually mean it.
Yeah, and mean it. And I remember telling my kids this, and I would show them, here's one way we can say, "How are you?" And I'd say, "How are you?" and be like walking away. There's my back, And you don't need to know how to be authentic or real or present, but you can practice. And I think, I had a practice when I anxiety is like every day I really have to manage like being present.
Right.
I really have to breathe. I have to focus. I have to like look at someone's eye, like, and mirror them. And I have to think about what they're saying. Because my brain's like thinking about the future, thinking about the things to do, thinking about like all the time. And so I think if you just practice saying, how are you? And like, look at their mannerisms and just keep practicing, being interested in practicing, being curious.
Right.
Then over time, you'll see the signs. You'll see, that person's shoulders are hunched over. They have bags under their eyes. Their eyes are red.
Yep.
And they're talking quietly. I should see, hey, how are you?
Yep, maybe I'll
and like wait for an
dig
answer.
into that a little bit.
Yeah, wait for an answer. Don't walk away yet. You never know. You never know. You never know.
Yeah.
I remember, like I said, that grocer, he never knew what that meant to me. That one conversation.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
You never know the impact. So that's perfect. I mean, that leads right into some of the warning signs to look for. And again, like this isn't warning signs to look for. Doesn't put it on you to solve that person's problems, right? And that's make sure that we understand that, because then that could lead into your own mental health issues. If you feel that you're responsible for this person and holding that person in safety, and then something happens to that person, that's not your fault, right?
Yeah,
you can't
that's
control
important.
what happens to that person. We can be aware, we can try to bring awareness to it, we can try our best to help, but ultimately the decision to do or not do is up to that person, right? So just making sure we understand that, because we don't want to take that guilt on ourselves in case something does go sideways. But things to look out for is a lot of the emotional stuff like you talked about. There's feelings of, and this is for ourselves as much as somebody else, feelings of hopelessness or having no reason to live,
Yeah, more than a couple of weeks. It's a consistent behavior. If you notice your coworker or your youth in school, their grades start to decline, their
Right.
behaviors, their personality changes. I mean, I'm not a licensed psychologist or counselor, and I know there are resources out there, but know that I remember having numbers and visuals on a board for my kids. Or even like social media, like having things on my platform where they can like click on. There's so many resources. I remember there's websites out there. I remember when I was really depressed and I was in grad school, like just a year ago, and I was like, just depressed and just overwhelmed. And I remember going online, and there are just 24-hour people waiting for you to reach out.
Yeah.
And there's a person on the other line, not a robot.
Yeah.
That can typing. If you don't want to talk, just typing. And so there's they meet you where you are, and just know that they're ready for you. They want to hear from you.
Yeah.
But knowing that you can just pop them as visuals, hand them out at workspaces, right? Have there be signs, have there be just a kiosk.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the more resources we have out there, and we'll talk about the 988, which is a newer number that is, the I don't know, want to say it's the answer, but it's a Band-Aid that's being put out there for people with mental health issues that don't want to call 911. They can call 988. And there's good, bad, and indifferent with that. So we'll go over that in a minute. But some more of the warning signs is negative speaking patterns. So how we speak negatively
huge,
about
yes.
ourselves, about the situations that we're in. Increased drug and alcohol
Definitely.
usage or numbing
Yeah.
capabilities.
Definitely.
And I mean, honestly too, I think meditation can be like an escape for a lot of people too. Maybe not to the extent of a precursor to suicide, but I do know I shit myself. Like I've gone through that myself to where I've I figure I can just meditate my way through it, and then all of a sudden I'm meditating for like 2 hours a day, and not really in a healthy way. It's more of an escape for myself, right? So it's noticing what those escapes can be, and drugs and alcohol are a big easy one to look at as an escape, but there's also sex as an escape. There's also there's different ways that we can escape through life, and pad all the different negative, quote unquote negative patterns that we have. Extreme mood swings, anxiety and depression, and previous attempts. That's a small list. There's a litany of warning signs for that. Ways that we can help once we do have these warning signs, again, whether it's ourselves or somebody else, is one, recognizing that these are warning signs, not being dismissive. That's
Yes.
it's just Adam.
So
He likes to
huge.
get blackout drunk. let's see why. Let's ask the questions. When that guy sobers up, like, what's going on with all this, right?
Right. Yep.
Reach out and establish dialogue, like you just said. Are you okay? And mean it. Are
Those
you okay?
3 words.
What's going on? Like, talk to somebody about what's going on and be present for them. Be direct with questioning. It's okay to be direct with, hey, how are you feeling? What's going on right now? And not in an accusatory way, not like, what the fuck's wrong with you? It's like, hey, I'm concerned. Like, there's something going on back there. Let's talk about this. Let's create a container of safety to where you feel safe talking to me about this stuff, because I'd much rather make time for you now in my busy ass schedule than make time for your funeral. Right? I will fucking clear my schedule so I can sit down with you for the next 5 hours and talk about what's going on with you. I can cover my yoga class. My kids can find a ride. That's fine. I don't want to have to take the next week off of work to grieve your loss.
Yeah.
And then find time to go to your funeral. No, let's do this now. Let's talk about this shit.
Yeah.
Right? Make fucking time for people. Don't panic. We talked about this earlier, right? Just because somebody is sharing their thoughts with you, that's a very personal journey, and a lot of times that is just all that's needed is just the share, just to get it off their chest. And now that can be your questioning that goes along with that to make sure that you feel comfortable and safe about it just being a word of caution or something to just want to, just to get off their chest. But, like I said earlier, a lot of times, like, if we raise up the red flag and cause panic because I just, told somebody I wanted to commit suicide, that might have been a very personal thing that, like, as soon as I said it, I realized I didn't mean it. But now more people are starting to find out. Now my parents are calling me. Now a psychiatrist just called me because they're concerned because my friend called that person. Well, now everybody fucking knows. And now that's going to drive me deeper into a depression of, like, shit, there is something wrong with me because now, so it's just being cautious about how we deal with the information that we have. If it's a crisis, stick around. Like I said earlier, make time for them now. It's a lot easier to make a day or so time now than to work in grief into your life and how to grieve for that person that's decided to take their life. When we could have just, we can, again, we're not putting this on the individual, but if you can find that time to make time for that human being, you never know what that impact can have. Listening and offering hope, active listening. Again, we don't have to solve people's problems, but we can just be that active listener, reflect their questions back to them, and that's a good way to reframe things, to have them look at the thing that they've just said to realize if they really mean it or not.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, if I could add on, has them feel like heard.
Yes.
I mean, they just want to be heard and understood in a world that I know that I would get misunderstood sometimes when I would be sleeping too much or missing work or whatever it is, as like me not caring,
right,
or me just, maybe just party Melissa, and make it, like, really, like, take yourself out of the equation. Like, what is going on over there?
Yes. Remove the stimulants, remove all the external stuff, and just really take a look at yourself or the person that you're trying to help with. Making a safety plan, like, help that person make a safety plan, help good. Them and be accountable for, be their accountability buddy. Like, if you feel this way, call me, let's talk about it. Or here's a number that you can call. Here's a person that's helped me in the past, whatever that case may be.
That's huge.
And then exploring the tools to help them, to help you explore. There's so many tools out there to help us. We talked about somatic breathing, meditation. There's, medication out there that we can take. There's a lot of research being done with plant medicines right now with suicide prevention and anxiety and depression and things like that. So, like, there are ways outside of what's currently mainstream to look at as alternatives for taking your life or exploring those suicidal paths, right? So, I mean, again, those are some, basic list of how to help. And if you don't feel like you're the person that can help, you can help that person find somebody. Help that person find the help that they need. The last thing I kind of really want to touch on, and I'm going to go on record by saying, like, I've never used 988. It's, again, the new alternative for 911. But with this topic and just my inquisitive brain, I've done some research about it and looked at both sides of it. And I'm actually, what I found is a lot of negativity around the number 988, not like it's a numerology number, but the usage of this number. And one of the things is that And I think it might be because it's still new. We're still
Yeah.
figuring it out. I don't want to just demonize the 988 and say that it's never going to work. But the way that it's being presented right now is that it's not completely anonymous, which is a big thing for a lot of people that are going through mental states. They want to just have like some time an anonymous person to talk to, and there are anonymous suicide hotlines that you can call that are completely anonymous that you can get help from a provider, a health provider. But this is 988. This is a government kind of like government program. So some of the cautionary tales that I've read about are, if the 988 operator doesn't feel like they're getting through to you or you're taking their advice, they have within their right the ability to call the police to your space. And again, like sometimes that red flag doesn't need to be raised, and that red flag being raised can drive somebody deeper into their depression, anxiety. And if they know somebody's going to come over, like a police figure is going to come over, that's a trigger for a lot of people to be like, fuck it, I'm just going to stop now, right? So that's definitely an issue that's being looked at. There is the idea of like if that police officer or somebody does come and take you away, there's forced treatment, right? And forced treatment again can drive people deeper into their depression and their suicidal thoughts because now they're getting validation that something is quote unquote wrong with them. And a lot of ways our forced treatment isn't really treatment. Like a lot of the intake programs for forced treatment is you're going to sit in this room for 24 hours without a counselor, without windows. Maybe you'll get basic food. You have a place to lay your head, and that's fucking it. You're not surrounded by community. You're not put in places where people are helping people. You can have a counselor to talk to. You're basically just isolated on suicide watch, right? That's Jesus Christ. Like that is going to throw people into just suicidal like spins, right?
Right. Yeah.
And again, that's a overarching statement I just made, but like it just doesn't seem like it's helping, right? And the last thing I want to talk about with this is it was interesting because the United Nations weighed in on this, and the United Nations has a statement saying that forced mental health treatment is a human rights abuse, and it should be outlawed in countries. Right, and that's the United Nations. That is, the majority of the established, world heads getting together and saying, hey, like when we force medical treatment on people, we're basically abusing their rights. So, I mean, in an overarching way, they're saying that the 988 in general is an abuse of human rights if it's seen through in the way that they want it seen through. So it's. Again, like I think we're trying, and it's awkward when we try because it's something different, it's something new. I love the fact that we're at least trying it, but I think the message that I'm trying to put out there with this is that and not to say you shouldn't try 988, but if you don't get the success you need from a number like that or the help that you're initially looking for, there's other avenues to look into. Right. There's the friends we talked about. There's family members. There's non-committed anonymous lines that you can reach out to that have helpful people on the other end. So
like one of the big ones. I mean, it's so cool. I didn't even know about 98 till you told me, so that's really good to know. And like anything new is going to be like, like what is that? You know what I mean? So it's cool that check it out yourself. You know what I mean? See what you think and create your own opinion. And but one that is a really great nonprofit organization that is in the country, and also one in Washington, is the NAMI, NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness. And there's one in Washington too, and there's also one that supports the BIPOC community too, with the rise in racism and discrimination and violent crimes. There's always a great resource. They have all the numbers, all the resources, places you can go to, for safety or just, people to talk to.
Right.
Just click. That's it. And anonymous. So that's something that, there's availability. You're not alone. I think it's so great that we're talking about this with suicide awareness coming up next month. School starts next month. So really great way to let people know, youth and adults to hey, keep this in your back files and know that it's, winter's going to be coming in the future. It's still summer, but it's good to have this.
Yeah.
So great.
Yeah, because seasonal depression's a thing.
Yeah.
There's definitely a link with that with vitamin D deficiency also.
Yeah, I mean, coming from the South, we're sun babies, so kind of I don't know about you, but I remember the first winter of like, why am I eating so much like, rice and corn? Like, what is going on with my carb intake right now? Why am I so sad? Why do I not want to go to school right now? Yeah, it's just being aware, like things shift with emotions and mood, and we talked about it here, but to keep an eye out on these certain you know observations, and be curious. For the love of Mary, please be curious in
Yeah.
other people, and know that how people are around you will affects how you live your life too. Yeah.
Yeah, most
So,
definitely.
and that could be your daughter or son or mother or daughter or father. You never know who that person is to people.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So I think as we wrap up here, I think the main message I want to say is just reach out. You're not alone. These thoughts are more common than you would think. Please don't act on them. Find somebody to help you. Find somebody to talk to. Find, if you're not ready to talk to somebody, journal about it. There's ways that we can look at ourselves and try to find the answers that we're looking for and the help that we need. And sometimes we just got to be vulnerable enough to ask for it. And the taking of your life might seem easy, but goddamn, it's one of the hardest things. And I've talked to people that have attempted suicide, and one of the overarching messages I get is, as soon as I've attempted, I regretted it. Right? The knife went through my skin. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I just did that. I took the handful of pills. I'm like, oh my God, how do I pump my stomach? So like there is that, it seems easy, but at the same time, like the regret, oh my God, no, what did I just do? No, I can figure this out. Oh no, I can't because that wound is too deep, or that there's too many pills now in my system. That's been the overarching thing that I've heard from people that have attempted suicide. So like, just remember, like, this is this moment. The next moment might be vastly different.
yeah.
It might be very beautiful. It might be very hard, but it's workable, right?
Yeah.
It's doable. There's so much shit that you haven't done yet in this life. There's so much shit that you did that you might not be proud of. But tomorrow's a fucking new day. Tomorrow's something different. Tomorrow's a whole nother mentality you can adopt, you can adapt to, you can move with. You can meet the person that you've never thought you would meet tomorrow.
Yeah.
You could have the most amazing conversation the next day, the next hour, the next minute. That could be the reason why you've chosen now to change your life and now help people instead of take your own. Like, we have no idea how this life plays out. No idea what perceived bad today might be the best thing that we never thought would happen tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, it's so final, right? And I think I've talked to parents last year and in the community where their son or daughter took their life. And the amount of pain on their parents it's like, I wish I saw the signs. I wish I had more time to talk. I wish I didn't work as much. Like, the regret is forever. Like, I can't imagine, I'm not a parent, but I can imagine the pain of losing a daughter or a son.
Right.
Non-binary, whatever you identify with, just know that for youth out there, like, just take it moment by moment. You know what I mean? Like, just take it one moment. Like, if you are able to just smile at yourself or brush your teeth, like, hey, that's a lot. Like,
Yep.
good for you. Like, just take a breath. That's good enough. Like, just know, like, take another day to, just be with it.
Yep.
And know that you're not alone. People care, and there's resources for you.
Damn straight.
Yeah.
You are loved.
Yeah. And
That's something Monica says all the time to me.
yeah,
You are loved.
you are loved.
Just remember that. You are loved.
like, write it on the mirror if you need to. I know I had to write on my mirror to remind me every day to, cut through the BS in my head of not being worthy, not lovable. Know that, no, I am. Just keep interrupting that negative self-talk, because that is not you. That is a conditioned story from the past that made you think you were missing or broken or,
Yeah.
not loved. So just be your own best friend.
There you go.
Give yourself a hug. Give yourself a smile. Look yourself in the mirror and be like, hey, you're enough.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe it, just try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I'm not sure how much help I can be, but my contact info is always at the base of these podcasts. So, there's people out there that can help. I'll put myself out there. If there's something I can do to reach out, please reach out and I'll see what I can do. But just know that you are loved. You are loved. There are people out there that love you and that will miss you and that depend on you as a human being. So
Yeah.
find your reason to stick around, because
Yes.
life can be fucking awesome too.
Yeah, count me in. My mission's there too. I mean, yeah, just sending you a big Barcelona hug of love, whoever's listening, and to know that you are uniquely you. There's no one in this entire universe exactly you, and there's so many things that has you be here that had to happen, that your ancestors had to happen, that like physiologically that had to happen to have you be here. Like one in a billion, like you are here. How cool is that?
Yeah.
And just take that with a breath in. Okay.
There you go.
All right.
Enjoy your purpose.
Please.
Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you so much for joining Melissa and I in this conversation. Please reach out and find the help that you need if you need some help. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of hotlines, people to talk to. Suicide is not the answer. So please find the help that you need. Reach out to myself or Melissa if we can be of any service to you. Thank you so much. Obeisance and love. We'll see you next time.